Hi everyone, this is Business is Personal. I'm Dr. Corrie, welcome back, and I have the most amazing topic today. We are talking about the number one fear among humans, which is public speaking. So, with me are guests Andrea, Anna, and Dave, and would you please just take a second and introduce yourselves?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us over. My name is Andreea Zoia. I'm a presenter and public speaking coach. I help people to develop their public speaking skills and build their confidence from A to Z.
Excellent.
Incredible. That's hard to follow. I'm Anna Roberts. I'm a communication strategist and a broadcaster as well. I've worked in broadcasting for the last 12 years. I'm an introvert myself, and I help people with their media training, their public speaking, and their personal branding.
Hi, I'm Dave Crane. I talk a lot. I'm a motivational speaker. I train people to do public speaking. I travel around the world doing big events and also hosting a lot of big events as well.
Excellent. So our primary audience today are business executives, managers. Most people are afraid of public speaking. Almost everybody's afraid of public speaking. They don't want to get up there and throw themselves in front of an audience and make mistakes. Whether it's a large audience, if you're presenting to a big crowd, or most often the application is presenting an annual report to the board. People are afraid of that. So how important is it, do you think, to have good communication skills among leaders?
Well, Carnegie Institute said for a very long time that 85% of your financial success is due to your personality and communication skills, and 15% is due to your technical knowledge, to what you know. So 85% of your efforts and focus should be on how you express yourself, how you connect with your audience.
Yeah, that's right. Anna?
To build on that, communication is how you do business. It's how you talk to your internal and your external stakeholders.
Yeah.
And so when you focus on a big presentation, for example, I always focus on using small everyday events in order to rehearse for it. So if you are coming up to that big board presentation, get to know your audience, understand what motivates them, what questions they may have, so that you can flag anything before they have a chance to.
Yeah, good. Dave?
I think we're living in a world where robotics, digitization, and automation are making more jobs become driven by the tech end. And so soft skills, communication are probably going to have more importance than they've ever had before, because it may be the one thing that keeps you employed if you consider having a 1.5 job, where your job is the main thing, but your 0.5 is your ability to do speaking, communication, or growing your brand, which is an important part of it. I think that's never been as important as it is right now.
Yeah, I really like that a lot. Actually, I do a lot of executive coaching, as do you. And building an executive's internal brand of themselves within the company is a new topic of concern. We didn't have to think about those things in the 80s and 90s, right? But now you don't have to just be smart. You have to be smart and funny, right? So how important is it then, or how do executives go about developing those smart and funny skills in order to maintain their popularity or their communication or their influence in the organization that they're in?
Well, I can start by touching on a small part of public speaking, which is voice. If you are someone who truly believes that business is personal, then persona is what you have to look at. We have to look at person. In Latin means, it's persona, it's who you are. So when you break down persona, is per means through, and sona is sound. So you bring yourself through sound.
Yeah.
Now, most people have things like lazy voices, dull voices, they sound monotonous. I sound today like I have laryngitis because I do. This is not my real voice, people. It just happened that I have the laryngitis, but I wouldn't have missed being with you and with you, Corrie. So if business is personal, you have to take your voice, the way you sound, very seriously, because you bring yourself through the way you sound.
Yeah, and I think, was it a study done in California suggested that 7% of our message is actually the message, and the other 93% is how we say it.
Yes.
So what you have to say is so much less important than how you say it in terms of the minds of the hearers and whether or not they absorb the information. So whether you're talking to a large audience or a board of directors, what you have to present to them is just a very small part. if you can't wrap your body, your voice, your personality around how it needs to be said. What are the most important ingredients for how it needs to be said, Anna?
How it needs to be said, I think you need to focus on the audience and exactly how they're receiving that message, because communication isn't a one-way street. It's a sender, a receiver, a message, and then it's feedback. It's a closed loop. It continues on and it evolves, it grows, it's a living thing. So if you think about your audience as your major focus, you have to remember that they don't remember exactly what you said, but they remember how you made them feel, to add and to build on your point. So having the ability to have high EQ, self-awareness, understanding how you communicate with yourself and how that empathy, how that transparency then feeds into other people and how they then view you is essential. You've got to have to, constantly be building that muscle. Communication is a muscle that you need to work.
Yeah, right. Dave?
I think the hardest bit is, you said about the branding, is you've got to go back to education. We were taught from a very early age not to stand out. Shut up, sit down, when I tell you, you can answer. And so then later on, you've got to think out the box, and you've actually got to be a personality and a manager and a leader where you've just had a whole childhood of having knocked out of you. And that's one of the biggest challenges. As for being funny with your personality, I find the most important part is not to be funny. Because if you're funny, you will polarize your audience. Some people like it, some people won't like it, and sometimes it's inappropriate. And I don't care, I'll just do it anyway. But I find that if you want to find an area that you can dominate and be very successful, be warm, not funny. Warm has the same relationship with the audience, but you don't put a foot wrong. Think like being a welcoming uncle or aunt rather than the one that stands out and makes the big difference. And I think you'll put your foot more on steady ground than if you try to be funny.
Yeah, I like that. Go ahead, Andreea.
I've been in the UAE for the last 14 years, and I've seen this gentleman performing live, and people are absolutely mesmerized by your performances. I do listen to you on the radio, and you are amazing, very refreshing. So when you are on stage, you're really putting on a show. Building on what you said about when we are young and we don't stand out, our emotional baseline is formed between age 1 and 7. So what I feel with most, especially with the CEOs I'm working on, I feel that they are giving me their self-image and their confidence, and I have to teach them now how to remold it. I mean, we are all creating a space for the executives to let go of their beliefs, of their certain part of their identity, and now step into choosing to be a more brave speaker, have a point of view, and make use that power, their voice. So if you have to remember something from this podcast is get yourself a coach to create that space where you can just practice, because everything that we are saying is already on Google, it's already on YouTube, it's in the books. All what you have to do is give yourself few weeks, few months to practice, have stage time, and in no time you will be speaking and enchanting audience.
Don't tell me it's on Google. There won't hire our services anymore. Just don't say that one.
Yes, what I'm trying to emphasize the fact that they need training. They need a person to rely on and practice. Without the practice, reading and watching is only just a small percentage of their training.
All right, so managers and executives out there, first of all, your fear of public speaking is a learned fear. You learned it in school, right, Dave?
Correct.
Okay, so excellence in public speaking is a learned skill. You can learn how to do it better than you are now. And exactly as Andreea said, get a coach. It won't take too long. Spend a few hours with a coach and you will improve dramatically. Remember, 93% of what you say is how you say it. And that impacts your value to the organization and your ability to influence the direction and strategy of the organization in the way that you want it to go. So, where do they start? What's the most important thing? They want to improve their public speaking, and they want to do it internally. Do they just grab their team together and start making speeches every week, or what?
I think you've got to go back to square one and look at exactly what the data is. How are you communicating with your audience at the minute? Is that through emails? Is that the most effective medium to communicate with people? Is getting the entire team together actually working to get the message across and the results that you want? Start by assessing exactly how you're doing business at the minute, and then see where you can improve on those areas, and pick up on how your audience wants to be communicated with. Do all your team want to be spending 3 hours in a meeting room? Probably not. Can you strategically strategically and effectively send that message across in a different way. For me, I find communication is like a puzzle. I can't do math problems. Numbers don't make any sense to me. But communication and bridging that gap between the sender and the receiver is something that really sort of sets my mind alight. And I really enjoy doing that. And I help other people find that bridge. And that's all it is. Like you said, communication is a learned skill. You can learn it if you put the time and the effort and the energy in.
And I love that you questioned the efficacy of email for doing that. Yeah, that's good. Dave?
I would take it back to even more basics than that. I think you ask a question, which is what's in it for them. Before you start anything, what's in it for them? So if you want them to sit and watch you talking about anything, what do they get out of it? Because many people have the fear of public speaking because they think they're being judged. You're not, you're being assessed. They work out, if that person's in front of me, are they what they say they are? Is their message going to be useful? And should I check my Facebook and WhatsApp while they're talking? If it seems like it all comes together, then they will join in and they'll give you that attention. If it doesn't feel like that, then they'll move on to something else. So you've got to think about what your own worth is, what they want, and then communicate effectively in a way that they want it to be done. That's what the trick is to being able to be an effective communicator.
Okay, so if we take the warm over funny thesis and say warm is more valuable than funny in terms of building a rapport with your audience, give us your quick tips for how to build that connection.
Record yourself on on your mobile and assess your voice. Don't pay attention to mine at the moment, as I said, it's husky, but find out if you have color, vitality, enthusiasm in your voice, because ultimately we first connect emotionally and then logically. So if you have a happy voice, a pleasant voice, like you've mentioned, a warm tone of voice, you are now finding that voice familiar. You trust that person more, you connect emotionally, and then you can pass on the data.
Most of us, Andrea, hate the sound of our own voices because we've never heard our voices the way that other people hear it. So when we're listening to ourselves on our phones, our immediate reaction is going to be, well, that first of all, that's not me, and secondly, that guy sounds dumb.
Yeah, you reject it. Well, with time. So if you're really serious about this, and I'm assuming that everyone watching is, you have to get over it. So you assess yourself on your phone, and you start building up your voice either with a voice coach. I do that with a lot of people by injecting melody, energy, and that comes through practice.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Anna?
Just to add to that, because I've been in radio now for over a decade, and I remember the first time that I heard my voice, you know, it was in front of the entire class. I was studying communication at university, and you have that horrible feeling where you go, that's not me, and I sound better than that. But you've got to understand that the way that you hear your own voice is permeated through muscle and tissue, and the way that others are hearing it, you know, directly, the way that they're hearing through their ears. So you've got to recognize that there is a difference first and foremost. And then to build on a point from Andrea as well, using emotion for me is the easiest way to be able to create those paths of similarities. So we may be from different countries, we may be different genders, we may have different life stories and experiences, but the one thing that we as humans are all connected by is emotions. We've all felt happiness, sadness, despair, anger, shame as well. You know, these really strong emotional ties are the way for me that I see is the answer to bridging that gap and creating those shared similarities rather than separate us by our differences. It brings people together, and that's what communication is all about.
Yeah, very good. Dave?
I think don't be scared to be you. If you've got a nasally voice, or you've got a whiny voice, or you've got some kind of voice that gravels and grinds people into the dust, be a better version of you. If you tweak it, but you get used to just the way that you are, then people will accept you. They don't care. If we were sitting in this room now, and we have the Dalai Lama, bless him, sat here, and he was speaking broken English and saying, you know what, the trees have jelly, and so therefore sandwiches must be more important for people's life. We'd sit here and we'd go, I have no idea what he's talking about, but it's a Dalai Lama, so I'm going to sit here, it must mean something. And that's the same with people. If you can communicate effectively and the message, the core message is something that's useful for them, they won't leave. They'll stay there. So a lot of people are self-conscious, worried about what people are going to think of them. Just do it. And they will buy into it if it was worth staying for. Just make sure it's worth staying for.
But they won't just do it that easy. They still need you. They still need Anna. They still need me, because they are busy doing logistics, operations, taking care of their families. And when they get the opportunity to go and be in front of people, all they focus is on, I'm not good enough, I sound horrible. So they need to put themselves in that space where they have to say, okay, how do I learn now to own the way I sound, because guess what? God gave you that voice.
Yeah.
Your job is to just go into full acceptance of who you are, where you are, how you sound, fall in love with that, accept it, and naturally the world will do the same.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think there's also, to your point, Dave, people need to be able to let go of who they are. I mean, they need to embrace who they are well enough that they're not aware of it anymore. And then all of their awareness is on the importance of the message for the people that they're talking to, right? So they're less conscious about how they're presenting and how they sound and the body language that they're using or not using, and should I be steepling at this moment? So rather than thinking about those things, they're thinking about how am I going to communicate this to you in a way that means something to you so that you connect with it. And then if I'm thinking about the message and the people that I'm talking to, then I lose track of the little pieces of communication. But that comes with time, right?
And Elizabeth Gilbert said in her book, as she was preparing to go on Oprah's Super Soul Sunday, massive tour, an incredible event that anyone would want to be involved in. And she was sitting backstage and thinking, I'm not good enough. I shouldn't be here. I need to do more work before I deserve to have a place on this stage. And then she realized the audience already has all the fare that they need. She doesn't need to give them anything more. So you've got to understand, to build on, your aspect, what energy are you transferring to the audience? How do you want them to feel? And they already have enough fear. So why are you giving them that?
Prior to that appearance, she confessed that she practiced for 2 months in advance. So Elizabeth Gilbert, hello, she took 60 days to practice for her appearance at Oprah, which tells us how important, again, practicing and being professional and going to that training is.
I know who she is.
I'll give her the book.
Eat, Pray, Love.
Sorry?
So,
I've not read it. No, but it's very good.
Transparent moment. I have my speeches on YouTube. You guys have your speeches on YouTube. How long do you practice, and how often do you practice before you get up and do like a 20-minute, 30-minute keynote?
I can take this one first, because I was actually last night up on stage.
Really?
Yeah. So
you sounded amazing.
Thank you so
much.
much.
Had an amazing audience.
So I did. I had an amazing audience, which always helps, the energy levels and things like that. Full transparency, I had planned to use the day in order to get everything prepared, to understand the audience a little bit more, to do a little bit of online stalking and know who had signed up for the event so that I could give them the best value out of myself. My son, I've got 2 sons, had been sick the entire day. All he wanted was mama, and mama had to be with him. So up until literally half an hour before the event, I had my son on me drooling, quickly got changed, and then headed up on stage, because that's what I have to do. That's what I have to do professionally. That's what I have to do in my personal life. Granted, that is a sort of an extreme example of just when everything doesn't go to plan. But for me, because I use everyday moments in order to rehearse, I view public speaking like a marathon. You have to work that muscle. You have to have a support crew around you. Which was my husband last night, taking over the kids. I had to make sure that I had support with me. My sister was with me. I had friends in the audience and things like that. And then I also focused on using these everyday moments in order to rehearse, because you wouldn't just wake up and run a marathon. You wouldn't just run 42 kilometers. Yet we spend 12 weeks getting prepared for those 42 Ks. Most people just want to get up on stage and just wing it. When we are communicators, because that's what we do for a living, we've been practicing this through and through, just like marathon runners. So if you want to do that couch to 5K or that, couch to 42K, you've got to put in the time, you have to put in the effort.
Dave?
I wing it. I do. I just get up and talk.
Yeah, but if you're presenting for what, 20 what? How many
I'm
years?
really old. But here's the thing. I know my subjects.
That's it.
I just need to know the audience. I just need to know what they're doing there, what the demographics are, and what it is that I want them to take away. And so I know the areas I'm going to be talking about, and I like it to be, so I don't present, and I tell people not to present. Don't give a speech ever again. Have a conversation with your audience. Just don't let them speak. And just when you, but you can create a relationship with them where it feels like it's a conversation, and so there's less pressure on you.
But it is a conversation. It's a nonverbal conversation.
It should be.
So even though you're the only one that's delivering the 7% of content and 38% of tone, that other that remaining piece of the pie, you're actually having that conversation. There's eye contact, there's eyebrows moving, there's people looking up or looking down, there's somebody looking at his cell phone or putting it down to listen to you.
So you're having feedback.
Exactly, you're having that conversation. I think it's just like you said, know yourself, know your audience, know your material. If you have those three things, know yourself, know your audience, know your material. If you have those three things, that's 80% of the way there.
Now, I haven't been presenting for so many years.
They'll make it look like a Morgan Freeman.
I've started only in 2014, so it's been only 5 years now. I've recently been invited to TEDx, and I presented in early December for TEDx Al Wasl, Dubai.
Nice.
And I've spent between 6 to 7 weeks cooking, brewing, changing the words, the keywords of the speech, because having the honor and the opportunity to go on a TEDx speech, it felt to me like presenting an essay. I wanted to, my talk was called Me and My Voices, and it's available already online. And I had this responsibility that I was now being part of, the TEDx community. So of course, for that occasion, I had to research, read, tweak, and practice. However, I definitely encourage that if you are speaking with your team, I agree with you 100%. If you know yourself, if you know your key messages, then you have to feel your audience and be of service to them.
Yeah, very good. Anna?
Absolutely. You have to take note of exactly what people are doing. As you were saying, are they checking out their phone? Are they nodding in agreement? And I think having the self-awareness and having the ability to manage those fears when you're up on stage and manage, your emotions and exactly what you're feeling, understanding what you're delivering to the audience, and then picking up and playing on that will only happen through that practice of being able to know that when I get up on stage, I get a rush of adrenaline, and all of a sudden I get that fight or flight instinct, but that's okay because it's going to pass in 2 minutes. I know my material, I know why I'm here, and I'm going to take those feedback and those cues and I'm going to work with it. Like I said, communication is ever evolving. It's always moving, it's always growing. So you've got to sort of play ball with it. It's a tango of sorts.
Yeah, that's right. Dave?
I did a TEDx about a month ago as well. And I prepared a lot of material. I'm sorry about that. It wasn't the same one, but I did stalk you at yours. So I know everything. And I put together a lot of material, and then I realized that they were putting me on last. And so I ditched all the material because I knew the audience would be excited, but if I repeated anything that the audience had heard, I wouldn't get the same response. So I did wing it. I winged my TEDx completely.
Wow.
And hopefully it worked and everyone enjoyed it. Certainly I enjoyed it because they had nowhere else to go. But I think that you have to know yourself, and you have to know your own levels of communication. You have to buy into what's in front of the audience. Some people like to rehearse, and I completely respect that. But for instance, if you are doing a script that goes from top to bottom and you've got every word that's in there exactly as it should be, and you get distracted, then right in front of your audience, you're going to lose where you are.
Yeah.
If you bullet point it so you know more or less where it's going, then I would say that you're looking at a mix of 70% should be your content and 30% should be your audience engagement. And that's what you should be looking at to get the message across most effectively. Yeah. Sometimes you need to raise the temperature, sometimes drop it down again, but that's what you should be ultimately aiming towards.
That is a really good metric. 70% of your material is your material. The other 30% is what you're getting back from the audience, and you're answering their questions before they ask. Definitely don't wing it. Sorry, Dave.
It's all right.
Managers in your positions, if you have to present a report or you're trying to bring up the energy level of your people, have notes. And definitely do what Dave said. Bring bullet points, don't script, and don't wing it. So bullet points and 70%. That's a really great tip.
And some extra motivation for everyone watching.
Yeah.
Public speaking is a lifelong skill. Once you have truly shattered your limitations and you broke through and you spoke a few times in public, you would have gained and built your self-confidence to such extent that it will cascade naturally in every area of your life. So give yourself the motivation to go out there on stage, go out there in front of your audience, face them, connect with them, because then you do it for you.
Yeah, that's right.
That's it. Dropping the mic.
Thank you. Anna?
Sorry, what was the question?
No, we were just feeding off of what Andrea said about dropping the mic.
I can't follow that. How do I follow that?
Ever.
Yeah. Sorry, Anna.
No, I completely agree when you were talking about how you've got to have, a high level of your own self-awareness.
Yeah.
I think going back to the basics of communication, whether you're talking to one person in an isolated meeting or whether you're talking to 1,000 people on stage, those principles remain the same regardless of who exactly you're talking to. But the more you invest in yourself, the more you are able to recognize the emotions in other people, their feedback that they're giving you, and exactly how to perform in those high pressure moments. Things like having great emotional awareness or great emotional intelligence are aspects that you can work on yourself. Communication as well, just like you went to business school in the beginning, did your CFA, for example. These are all aspects that you formally studied towards. Yet communication is how you do business and how you practice all of that at the end of the day. So having that moment to internalize, to recognize where your communication strengths are. Is that in written communication? Is that in oral communication? Do you really enjoy doing something in front of a camera or a microphone, but not necessarily in front of 1,000 people? If you can effectively communicate your message, you've got to hone in on what platform works best for you and then execute it that way. For me, I'm an introvert. Last night absolutely exhausted me, even though I loved being around people there. I'm going home after this just to have an hour or so on my own, be with my son again, who's still sick, kids, and I'll pick up and I'll go from there. But I've taken years to be able to recognize that being in the studio for 3 hours and being around a lot of people exhausts me, even though I love it. And that's okay, because that's just me.
Yeah, fair enough. Dave?
I think that one of the things we've got to dial it back again. People talk all the time. You talk to yourself, you talk to your friends, when you go shopping, you talk. Don't be scared of realizing that you've had lots of examples of communication, but you just weren't aware that you can manipulate it, use them as examples. Practice talking in the car. You're talking on the phone all the time. You have a transactional relationship with people all around you. And ultimately it comes into some kind of selling. As your communication. So getting a microphone and getting an audience in front of you is not that different. What you have to do is get over the fear of, people are watching me. We could have a long chat all about what creates that fear. But you want to be centered and be you. So you can think in real time like you are now and slow it down so we can have a normal conversation. And that means that when you're in front of an audience, you can be very effective without being thrown off. You don't have to super practice, but you can get the stuff that you want. And the audience will buy into it. So you don't have the fear. And also ask that question, what's the worst thing that could happen? You dry up, so what? If you set it up as a conversation, they won't turn around and give you a hard time because they just feel we're in it together.
All right, so we have managers and leaders out there who are about to step into the boardroom, into their meeting, in front of their people, and they're still scared. Your last line of encouragement for the fearful.
Breathe. It will through breathing you control your nervous system. Athletes do it, actors do it. Breathe deeply. Learn how to breathe. Do yoga, and that will immediately center you and connect you with your true self, with your inner self, and with your message.
Excellent. Anna?
I've actually got 2 points, if I may. One is to own yourself and your value and your strengths. Know that you're in there for a purpose, for a reason. If that's to convey information, if that's to share your findings and your work, you're there as a valued member of the team, period, before anything else. Secondly, failure is an event. It's not a personality trait. So you may think that you have been a big failure if that's what you end up leaving, the meeting with. But that is not true. Failure is what has happened, and it's what you can do something about. It's either in the past or it's something that's created in your head. It's an event. It's not a personality.
Good, I like that. Dave?
3 things. First of all, carry a notebook so you can write down the points. So when it's your turn to speak, you won't have a head that goes blank because it'll be written down. Second thing is lower your voice, because politicians do it to make you sound smart. So if when I talk like this, everyone goes, oh wow, you're smart. So lower your voice, and less is more. If you say less stuff, there's less chance of you messing it up, and everyone thinks you've turned into Yoda. So they really like the way that you say stuff. So just prepare, chill out, and take it easy.
I like that. Okay, so whether public speaking is both a talent and a skill, communication is both a talent and a skill. We're all born with some level of expertise, and we can all get better. These are excellent tips. Excellent. Thank you so much. If you want to see my own development on podcast, I've never done a podcast before. I don't remember which episode this is, but look on my website, go back to podcast number 1 and watch me Watch me, totally different experience, okay? So I will be your guinea pig at this. And if I can do it, then definitely you can do it. All right, thank you so much for being with us. Business is personal, and we're so excited to have you. Thank you so much. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you.